Hi, and welcome to Majestic.cloud. My name is Laszlo, and today I'm going to show you how to implement auto scaling in EC2. So let's start with auto scaling. What is auto scaling? EC2 Auto Scaling is a feature of EC2 which allows you to maintain the availability of your application by adding and removing EC2 instances according to some conditions that you define. From an architectural perspective, this looks like this. We basically have an application load balancer, so all your traffic will flow into this application load balancer, which will distribute the load to the EC2 instances. These EC2 instances are in an auto scaling group and have a target group also attached. And whenever your application is under heavy load, this is detected by monitoring the CPU usage. So when the CPU usage is above 50%, this will trigger an auto-scaling action, which will add an instance to our auto-scaling group. This is called scaling out. If the load is still high, it will add another instance and so on. If the load disappears, then the instances are removed, which is known as scaling in. So let's look now at our demo. First, we will implement a launch template. I have shown you in my last video how to create a launch template for manual launching of instances. So today we are going to look at how to use launch templates for auto scaling. After we define our launch template, we will create an auto scaling group and then a load balancer with a target group. But let's not waste any more time. We need to build this so you can see it in action. I am now in the EC2 console. I will go to EC2 and let's go to launch templates. We will start by creating a launch template for our auto scaling group. Here I have the launch template I've created in my last video, but I will create a new one this time. So click on create launch template. This will be my app launch template, and I will click here to provide guidance to help me set up a template that I can use with EC2 auto scaling. I need to choose the AMI that I will use. I will use Amazon Linux 2 AMI, but here you could also choose an AMI that you have made yourself. So if you did AMI baking, then you can use your own AMI here. Then the instance type, I will want to include this in the template, and it will be T2 micro, so I can stay in the free tier. I will not include a key pair, so it will not have an SSH key. I need to select my security groups. I will use the default security group in my VPC. I recommend you to not use EC2 Classic. This is some legacy feature that will be removed. Now let's go to the advanced details, and here I want to add some user data. This will basically bootstrap my instance. What this does, it will do a yum update, will install the Apache server, so HTTPD. It will enable it and run it automatically when the instance starts. It requests the instance ID and the availability zone from the metadata data service, and it will create an HTML file in which it will include this information, the instance ID and the availability zone. And then also it will use Amazon Linux Extras to install a small little utility called stress. So I will use this stress utility to put stress on the server so we can see how it scales when the CPU usage goes up. So let's create this launch template. And now I can either click here to create an auto scaling group, but I will not do that. I want to show you where to find the auto scaling group feature. So this is here in the EC2 at the bottom of this left side menu. Here you have auto scaling groups, and you click on that and then create an auto scaling group. So I will use my app as G from auto scaling group, and I will want to use my app launch template. I will always use the latest version. Usually you would choose a stable version, but if I want to make some modification, I want to use it automatically. Here we have some defaults that come from the launch template, like the instance type, key pair, which I don't have, AMI ID, and so on. Now let's click on next, and here the instance purchase options, I want to adhere to the launch template. The VPC, I will want to use my default VPC, and I need to select some subnets. I will use 2 subnets, so my instances from this auto scaling group will be launched into these instances. So I will use US East 1 and 1A and 1B. Okay, let's click on next. Then I will not attach now a load balancer. We will do this later, but you could also click here on attach to an existing load balancer or attach to a new load balancer. I will use no load balancer just to show you later how you can add this to this auto scaling group. I will leave everything the default here. Let's click next. So the group size here is my desired capacity, which is how many instances I want the auto scaling group to have. So it will be two instances. The minimum capacity, this is the lowest number it can go, so it will be also 2 because I want them I want high availability, so I want at least 2 instances, and the maximum capacity will be 5. So here you could set a higher number, but just to be reasonable with costs, I will use 5. And the scaling policy, this will define how your auto scaling group scales up. And here I want to select an average CPU utilization, and the target value will be 50%. Here you could set a higher value depending on your use case. And here you need to specify what time your instances need to warm up before they can be included in this. So I will put 120 seconds. In this time my instance will boot up and run that small bootstrap script that I've put in the user data, and I will not check disable scaling, and also I will not enable instance scaling protection. Let's click on next. You could add a notification here. Whenever you're scaling, you will be notified, but I will skip this. And also I will skip tags, and here I have a review screen. Everything should be fine, and I will click on create auto scaling group. So what happens is now my auto scaling group is created. It's being created, and this sometimes takes a time. Now the desired capacity is 2, the minimum is 2, and maximum is 5. So let's see what happens here. If I go to the instances, in some time my auto scaling group should try to achieve the numbers I have put in there. So desired capacity 2, and if I click on refresh, you can see that I have already 2 instances pending. So my auto scaling group already starts launching these instances. Let's go back and see the status. We can see instances 2, desired capacity 2. And if we go back, these instances should start up in some time. Let's wait for that. So my instances are up and running, and what I will do now to demonstrate how auto scaling always tries to keep the number of instances according to the numbers I've specified there, I will just come here and terminate this instance. Let's click on terminate, and once this shuts down, Auto Scaling group will detect that one of the instances has been shut down or has some problem and it's not serviceable, so it will automatically launch a new instance to replace this one. So we'll need to wait a bit for that and come back then. My instance has terminated, so I will click on refresh, and I can already see that I have a new pending instance. Auto Scaling is proceeding and launching a new instance to match my desired capacity, which is 2. So let's just take a look at this instance. I will copy the IP address, not this one, the other one, which is running for a longer time. So if I go there, I can see that my bootstrap script worked, Apache is installed, and it says my page is generated by instance, the ID of the instance, you can see it, in availability zone US East 1A. And if I look it's here 1A, and the other one is in 1B. Now let's close this and let's go and create a load balancer for our application. Let's create a load balancer. It will be an application load balancer, and here I will name it my app application load balancer. I will just use the HTTP listener. I don't want to configure right now HTTPS. And here I need to use the same 2 availability zones that I've used for the auto scaling group, because otherwise this would not work optimally. Instances launched in other availability zones would not be registered by the target group. So let's click next on configure security details. Here it warns me that I don't have HTTPS, but that's fine for now. For security groups, I want to use my default security group. Let's click on configure routing. Here it asks me to define a new target group, and I will name it my app target group, and this will be HTTP. I need to define the health check. Health check will be on index HTML, and healthy threshold 2. This is the number of consecutive health check successes that are required before considering a target unhealthy. And then let's see, the other ones will remain like this. Next, register targets. I want to register the first 2 instances that I've launched with auto scaling group, add to registered, so they are shown up here in the top list. But from now on, this registration will be automatically done by the auto scaling group. So click on review. Everything seems to be fine, and let's click on create. So my application load balancer is creating. This usually takes a few minutes, so we need to wait for this to finish. So my load balancer provisioned successfully. It's active now, so I can use this DNS name here to access the load balancer and basically the instances that are there. So it should work. It works, and it says that this instance in US East 1 is serving this page. If I do refreshes, it should cycle through the instances. You can see that it's once is one instance and the other instance in the other availability zone, and so on. So now what I want to do, I want to put some stress on my servers, and for that I want to go first to my let's first modify our auto scaling group. Let's modify the auto scaling group and attach the load balancer to this. So let's go here and go down here to load balancing, click on edit, and I want to use my up target group. So I need to do this update, otherwise the new instances will not register in the load balancer. So click on update, and I should have right now load balancing defined here. And now I can put the stress on my servers. I will go to the security groups because I need to open up SSH ports to log into the instances. So I will go to my default security group, click on edit inbound rules, and I will add a rule to allow SSH from everywhere. You should not do this, you should lock down to your own IP, because this is not best practice to allow it from everywhere. But to save time right now, I will allow SSH from everywhere, and then I will restrict it. Click on save rule, and then go to instances, and I want to use instance connect to connect to my instances. So EC2 instance connect, let's connect to this instance, and it should connect. It got connected, and what I'm going to do now, I will use that stress application that I installed with the Bootstrap script, and put load on the CPU of the instance. So it's done like this, stress C and 10. Let's see the help. So here's an example. So the CPU N, it will spawn N workers spinning on some function. So let's do that. 10 workers. Okay, and go to the other instance, which is this, and I want to do the same thing here. Let's connect to this one and put some stress on this as well. Oh, okay, and now I will go back to the auto scaling group, and I will show you where should you monitor this. So we have here monitoring, and click on EC2, and here we can see some metrics of our auto scaling group. So the CPU utilization, which interests us, and when we launched the instances, this went up to around 17%, which is not enough for auto scaling to kick in. We need to wait a bit until auto scaling detects the stress that I've put on the servers, and then it will do the scaling. And we can see that here in the activity. These are the initial activities that we done, and here it should show up when the alarm triggers and the instances start to launch to match the demand that is detected by the load balancer. So right now I still have 2 instances. I will need to wait a bit. I will pause the video until that and come back here to show you how this works. So about 5 minutes have passed since I've paused the video. Let's see what happened here. And if I do a refresh, I can see that my CPU usage is at 97% or 99 even. So let's see here on the activity tab, what do we have? And we have some instance launches. We have some alarms that triggered in, and target tracking policy changing the desired capacity from 2 to 3, then from 3 to 4, and then from 4 to 5, which is the maximum because I set that 5 is the highest number of instances I want to have. So if we go to instances, you can see that I have 5 instances, from which 2 are initializing right now. These were all launched by the auto scaling group on its own. I didn't do anything on this, so this happened automatically, and I can see that the desired capacity has been set to 5, which is equals to the maximum capacity, so it will not go higher than that. And here you can see the activity history. The last 2 instances are just waiting for warm-up. Now let's go to our target group, and there you can see that in my app target group I have 5 registered targets, all the 5 that were launched by the auto scaling group. So these target groups, which are an interesting feature, you could use multiple target groups in your load balancer and direct traffic according to some rules to specific target groups. So you could have, for example, the web tier go to one target group and the application tier to go to another target group based on domain or things like that. I have a video on that on my channel. I will link it here. It's useful to check out and see how you can work with multiple target groups to direct traffic to specific instances. But that's beyond the scope of this video. Let's now go and kill those stress processes, and that I cannot do because the instance has frozen up. So what I will do, I will terminate the 2 instances that were making the stress, and then come back. So these instances were this one. I will click on terminate, and the other one is this one, and I will terminate this instance as well. So what auto scaling will do, it will detect that I have 3 instances. It still has high load, so it will initially launch 2 new instances to replace these 2, and then after launching the 2 new instances, the load should go down because I don't have the stress processes running anymore, and it will detect that, and it will terminate the instances and put the desired capacity back to 2 again. But for that we need to wait a bit, so I will pause the video again. So after a while auto scaling is launching a new instance to replace the one I've terminated, because it didn't yet detect that I have a smaller load on the instances. And let's click on refresh again and wait a bit more. Meantime, we could also take a look at the auto scaling group activity tab and see what happens in our auto scaling group. So if I go to activity, I can see that an instance was taken out of service in response to an EC2 health check indicating it has been terminated or stopped. So it is increasing the capacity from 4 to 5. Then it detects that my other instance was terminated, and again increasing the capacity, so I should have another pending instance, and it's already running, so I have again 5 instances. It takes a while until it detects here in the monitoring tab that my load has dropped, and then it will start terminating the instances and will bring my desired capacity to 2. So let's go back to activity and wait for this to happen. We could also take a look at my load balancer and see what instances are serving traffic. We can see that we have a few instances here which are serving traffic from US East 1B and 1A, and there are still more than 2. Let's click and see if something else happened. Nothing yet. On the monitoring tab, if we go to EC2, then we can see that the CPU utilization has gone down. So right now we have like 3% CPU utilization, which should trigger soon the instance scale down. Let's click on refresh. So while we wait, I wanted to tell you something about scaling. So always you should scale out early, so when load is detected as fast as possible, and then the scaling in should happen later. So you need to be cautious with that, because apparently it might seem that your load has disappeared, but that could be just temporarily and it could come back. So it's always good to keep the instances provisioned for a longer time, and auto scaling does exactly that. So if we go to CloudWatch and see the alarms that auto scaling has automatically created for us, here we have all alarms, and we have two alarms that auto scaling automatically created for us. So it's the alarm high, which if CPU utilization is more than 50% for 3 minutes, then we have an alarm and the instances start to the auto scaling group starts to scale out. And if the load disappears, then we have another alarm, and that says if CPU utilization is less than 40% for 15 minutes. So it will wait for 15 minutes before starting to scale in. So that's why we need to wait this long to actually see our instances disappearing, the scaling in action happening. So there's still no movement. The last movement was at 5:35 p.m. and then in a few minutes I should have, because it's now 5:15, I should have another action here happening, which is the scale in. So after about 20 minutes my alarms kicked in. So the target tracking alarm detected that my load has decreased and it started to terminating instances. So you see terminating EC2 instance at 5:18 p.m. So at 18 minutes actually before after the last event. So it reduces capacity from 5 to 4, and then from 4 to 3, and then from 3 to 2. And if we go back and click a refresh here, we can see that the instances are still running, but they are being targeted for termination, but they are in the connection draining phase. So any connections that you had on that instance need to finish before auto scaling will terminate them. So I have my first instance shutting down, and let's see what happens in the target group. Here are the targets. If I click on refresh, so you see draining target, the registration is in progress. So these two will terminate soon. The other one already disappeared. And once my instances terminate, then I will be back at my initial capacity, the 2 instances. Another instance is shutting down now. And it's already terminated, and I still have one instance that needs to disappear, and then I will show you also how to clean up this account. So everything we've created we will tear down, so you keep your account clean. So let's go to my auto scaling group and just delete it, select the auto scaling group and click on delete. I need to confirm it. Confirm. So it's deleting. It will take a while. So next I will delete the launch template. I have this my app launch template, the other one I need still, so let's click on delete. Delete. So I've deleted the launch template. Let's go to the load balancer and here click on delete. It's deleted, and the target group should also be deleted. Yes, delete. And after a while my auto scaling group, which is deleting, should disappear. Because I'm deleting the auto scaling group, my other two instances, the initial two instances, should also have been terminated, and you can see that they are terminated. The last one is shutting down right now. So I think the auto scaling group waits for this one to terminate, and then it will disappear as well. Yes, so I no longer have the auto scaling group. So this is it for today. This is how you use auto scaling. I hope you liked this video. If you did, click on the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you soon with another video here on Majestic Cloud. Have a nice day.